Hey everyone, we're happy to be back for yet another LoLEsports and Skill-Capped collaboration. For this episode, we are going to be zoning into the CBLOL's best performing mid laner, Loud's tinowns. Watching his games, we found so many impressive things we could cover, ranging from his laning, mechanics, all the way to his game-winning flanks. tinowns is an amazingly well-rounded player that impressed us the more and more we watched. But what we really want to highlight in this guide is something that many viewers don't often get to appreciate when simply watching the games being played. tinowns is extremely good at recognizing and playing around who in the game currently has the burden of action. What do we mean by this? In League, there is often game stats, plays, or timings where one player or team must make something happen, while the other can simply just try to prevent it. The most basic example we can give you of this would be a full early game team versus 5 champions that scale into the late game. In this case, the burden of action falls into the early game team's hands. They must build a lead, they must kill their opponents, they must close the game out before they're outscaled. On the other hand, the late game team doesn't have to do anything. They can drop objectives, go down in CS, they can even die once or twice as long as they don't fall too far behind. Their win condition is to simply do nothing and go even or slightly behind, and eventually they're going to naturally win. That is a super important dynamic to understand if you want to get much better at strategizing your way to a victory. It can often be very difficult to force something versus a team or player who just has to stop you from achieving your goal. Having the burden of action makes your gameplay predictable, and when you're predictable, it's very easy to stop you from doing what you want to do. In any case, this concept doesn't just apply to team compositions. There's many game states where you can quickly recognize who must act and who needs to respond. This game is a simple example of the concept. tinowns manages to chunk out the Azir out of lane, forcing him to teleport back. This places the burden of action on Azir. Why? Well, he's stronger than tinowns at this moment, but had to use his teleport to achieve this. Meanwhile, tinowns still has his own TP. He could lane for 1 to 2 more minutes and then take his own recall and teleport back with more items than Azir bought. As Azir, you cannot allow this to happen, so he's forced to play super aggressively to prevent tinowns from doing that. On the other hand, tinowns can simply play as far away as possible. He can sit under his tower and take simple trades, since he can just reset whenever he wants. Basically, Azir has to do something to either earn a lead or prevent tinowns from teleporting back for free, and all tinowns has to do now is play around Azir's predictable actions. You can very clearly see how desperate Azir is to try and prevent Orianna from basing. tinowns is using that to his advantage to bait him into wasting cooldowns and mana. Now he can walk up and push another wave while Azir's Q is down. Eventually, tinowns gets to base, and what we described comes to fruition. They might have the exact same gold, but due to his later recall, tinowns now has a massive item advantage over Azir. He eventually uses that to get priority in the lane, and then he uses that priority to roam on bot lane, putting his team massively ahead. It's not some super fancy next level tactic, but understanding both the simplicity and the usefulness of knowing who must act and who only has to respond can give you way more strategic options to play around. Alright, so that was a simple example to explain the concept. But now let's take a look at how tinowns uses the burden of action to completely dismantle an entire team. It's often hard to jump into the middle of a game with so much going on, so here's all you need to focus on for our lesson. The enemy team makes a very aggressive macro call based on where they last saw tinowns on the map. They notice that he's top lane at the moment, and they know his teleport is down, so they decide to group up and siege the bot lane tower as 5 players. Initially, this seems like a big problem for Loud. Normally, when your opponents force hard on one side of the map and you're on the opposite side, you simply want to trade resources or objectives that are available near you. But that's hard to do here. First of all, tinowns is really far away from even pressuring the top tower. He has to push this wave and then walk to the tower, which takes like 15 to 20 seconds. Not only that, but he's playing Talia, a fairly slow tower destroyer. On top of that, the enemy team has 5 void grubs to Loud's single grub. And to add even more spice to the mix, they have a ton of strong engaged champions along with Jinx. There's a real threat that if Loud mispositions just a little bit, that the enemy team can dive them and end the game instantly. So a normal player would usually realize the threat and base after pushing this wave. They drop the tier 2 and defend the inhibitor tower, and the game would continue from there. But tinowns understands the burden of action very well, and he's playing to win. So he does something so simple, but a play that many players wouldn't dare to do. He just stays top. It may not seem super crazy, but we want you to think about what this play actually does to the mentality of all 10 players on the map. Prior to this, the enemy team was probably thinking something like, okay, nice push guys, we're gonna get Talia to back, and we're getting the tower too. And Loud was probably like, do we defend? Let's wait tinowns, give this tower, and fight on the inhib, I guess. By staying top though, tinowns placed the burden of action on his opponents. But for the sake of argument, let's say this isn't even a good play by tinowns. Let's say his opponents are still 70-30 favored, just because they have grubs and Jinx with a lot of engage ultimates up. Even if Loud isn't theoretically favored here, the mentality of all 10 players on the map has shifted dramatically. To illustrate how, let's imagine you're playing on the blue team right now. Put yourself in Oriana's shoes. You're pushing with your team, expecting Talia to base. Before you lost vision, she was clearly walking forwards, she's not basing. You hesitate a bit, you did not expect that at all. Okay, so quick question, what do you do about it? Keep in mind that every little 3-second pause we do is happening in real time to Oriana. She's having to make these tough choices instantly, just try to keep that in mind. Okay, tinowns is trolling, your call was good, you're already close to the tower, and you have 5 grubs. You decide to stay. Okay, the enemy team is hard disengaging though, and you see Talia reaching your tier 2 tower. What do? Oriana thinks someone should base, so she backs off and starts recalling. Wait, Maokai is in range to maybe initiate, this is good. Forcing a 5v4 is exactly what you wanted all along. Do you continue recalling or cancel to join the fight? Oriana cancels, but oh wait. The enemy team was just baiting you. Crap, what now? Let's focus on Renekton for a bit. You've been getting toyed with for about 15 seconds here. At the same time, you see Talia starting to hit your inhibitor tower. You have teleport, what do? Screw this, we need to stop falling for this, let's just recall and defend our inhibitor tower. Worst case scenario, you TP back. Okay, you're about to recall, but then you see this on your screen. What do? Okay, surely you stay here, right? A massive fight is about to happen, you get here, and you clean up a Nautilus before the fight is over, great. Back to Oriana, you glance over to top lane, tinowns is already almost done taking your inhibitor tower. Meanwhile, you've got more members, but your wave is 5 or 6 seconds away. What do? Okay, enough fooling around. You need to base. You're losing the game getting baited here. You need to defend the inhibitor. The second you finish your recall, you realize tinowns isn't pushing anymore. He knows you base. You scream, back, as you slowly watch your team fall apart. And all you can do is watch as they get chased down by the loud members now that tinowns has joined the fight. This is how the burden of action causes players or teams to fall apart. You've probably all experienced this in solo queue at some point. A Tryndamere is randomly in a side lane and your team is 5v4 at Baron. Technically, you've got the advantage, but you have to do the Baron. You have to force it, and that's where things go wrong. You've all experienced a game going poorly that way. Even if it wasn't you messing up, someone on your team probably panicked because they had to get something done. And that's what made this simple decision to stay top so deadly. tinowns forced the enemy team to commit to something, and they had to do it fast. They had to either fully engage or just send someone back, and they had seconds to decide. Meanwhile, the rest of Loud is probably really calm at this point. They're all just chilling, knowing that all they have to do is be a bit annoying, try to bait people to stay, just don't die. That's it. It's far less likely that they mess up when they're so relaxed compared to the team who has to act and act fast. Of course, some of you may be thinking that was cool and all, but you can never make that type of decision in solo queue. tinowns' teammates were all on the same page when he stayed top. You can see their coordination by how they're properly trying to bait. In solo queue, they would just run and die, right? That's fair, but here's a little skill capped reminder about how learning from pro play can easily translate to solo queue. Whenever we teach you concepts, we want you to take away what you learn and think about it on a scale. So, while your teammates won't play defense nearly as well as Loud did by being coordinated, your opponents also won't react nearly as well either. Think about how panicked they looked when they felt pressure to do something. They clearly had a hard time reacting to this play. Your opponents will lose their minds even harder in most cases. Better yet, let's cover the worst case scenario possible. Imagine that you made the exact same play in solo queue, but your teammates all died and you lose the inhibitor. While that sucks, you can also play around the value of not having to share resources. Even if your opponents kill everyone, they're having to share all the minion waves, tower gold, and kills amongst all 5 players. On the other hand, tinowns was getting all the local gold and experience to himself. Getting a ton of funneled resources might let you carry the game even if your entire team died in that type of play. We can see this concept even in this game. Thanks to all of that solo gold that he earned, tinowns was pretty far ahead of everyone in the game in terms of gold. This allowed him to easily purchase a Seeker's Arm Guard for the next fight, and then he uses that utility in the next fight beautifully. Look at how much space he's building for his team by diving forward with a stopwatch. He wasted so much of the enemy team's time without dying, allowing Loud to easily come out ahead in this game-deciding fight. In any case, that play wasn't technically that difficult to do. Looking back, all tinowns did was sit top and just keep pushing and let fate take the wheel. That's actually one of the biggest learning lessons you can ever take away from top tier players. From our experience of helping players get better at this game, one of the biggest things that holds them back from improving is the fear of things going wrong. His team could have easily lost the game on the spot, and there was no guarantee a split pushing here was going to even work. Even in competitive, it's very difficult to have faith in your teammates' abilities to fend for themselves. Let's take a look at another one of tinowns' games to show you an example of how you can use that fear against your opponent. wins. This time, we'll be taking a look at the early laning phase between tinowns on Ahri versus a Vex. Now, credit to the Vex, she actually played this early lane phase very well. She used her minion dematerializer on the cannon minion to get priority on this single wave. In doing so, she was able to find a timing, rotating towards top lane to dive Robo, putting him terribly far behind. Then she bases, buys Lost Chapter, and can now teleport back to lane. Obviously, that's not good for tinowns. Vex made a good play and is about to come back to lane with a massive mana advantage. If the lane proceeds in a 1v1 from here on out, she's going to spam shove him into the tower and roam again. The game might effectively be over. tinowns needs to do something, or the entire map is going to belong to Vex for a while. He knows that the one advantage he has is that Vex missed a wave of experience to roam. If you don't know, the wave that comes in at 5 minutes will give you exactly level 6, if you have not missed a single minion worth of experience. tinowns obviously knows this timing, so he's instantly trying to crash this wave as Vex teleports in, getting level 6, and immediately roams to bot lane. This is really smart. Although Vex has Lost Chapter, she didn't get level 6 after clearing the wave. The power of Lost Chapter is in its ability to let you spam spells in lane. In a random skirmish, it's nice, but not that useful. So, tinowns is technically stronger by simply being level 6. That's why the enemy team has to show so much respect here. Vex felt super pressured to follow tinowns to make sure her teammates didn't die to the roam. She also face-checked the brush to make sure Loud cleared out of the area and has to go back to mid, but Vex has another issue to deal with now. She sees this control ward here. If she goes down, Vex knows that Loud will see her pathing back to lane. tinowns didn't use his ultimate, so that's pretty dangerous. On the other hand, if she goes this way, it's a slight but meaningful detour. tinowns will see whatever choice she makes, and if she takes that long detour, he'll be able to push and get priority again, leading to another roam threat. Vex doesn't want to let that happen. She has Scuttle Vision and Vi next to her, so she gambles on the shorter path. tinowns does not let that go unpunished. He tanks the fear and then ults towards her. Then he holds his charm for a while, just auto-attacking her. Because she's juking back and forth trying to dodge it, this gives time for Croc on Jarvan to close the distance and get in range to help. Then, the second that Vex and Vi stack on each other, tinowns throws his charm, since it's likely it'll hit at least one of them. Vex takes the hit and throws away the massive lead she earned herself. This is a perfect lesson in how the fear of things going wrong can lose you games and why it's so important you overcome it. It also highlights how tinowns exploits that fear to take control of games even in bad situations. Returning to the moment that Vex teleported back to lane, take a look at her bot lane. They're kind of fine. If Ahri roams down here, at worst they have to sit back and give up some waves. We can compare this very easily to the previous example, where tinowns didn't budge from top lane. If he reacted to the 5-man push, they'd still lose their tier 2 tower and not get anything in return. So he opted to turn the play around on his opponent with a risky gamble. Let's take that concept back to this game. What should Vex do instead of following tinowns to put the burden of action on him instead? If you thought about sacrificing your teammates and just sitting mid to push the next wave, you're exactly correct. Pushing a wave aggressively is almost always the answer for how you can put pressure on your opponents to make something happen. Imagine the scenario. Vex says, guys, I'm not following, Ahri has prio, good luck, I'll push mid. With Ahri bottom, think about how everyone would be feeling. Vex's teammates could just sit back, knowing she's putting pressure in mid. On the other hand, tinowns would probably be in a rush to make the dive work. His comms might be something like, we have to dive fast, I'm losing a wave in mid, Vex can follow soon, we have to go on this wave, go. We're certain he'd probably keep his cool, but you get the point. The burden of action would be on him and Loud, and that might cause them to make some mistakes. It's the same thing here. Vex could have taken the safe way back to lane, but she was afraid of giving priority again. That fear of her teammates dying to the next gank is what caused her to take the greedy route and end up dying. A lot of observers don't often get to appreciate all of the small mental battles that go on in professional games. They're a bit hard to see unless you know what to look for, but great players like tinowns are constantly putting invisible pressure on their opponents, causing them to crumble and throw away the game. Now that you have a better idea of what to look for, you might notice some of those hidden plays going on in pro games. It'll be easier for you to appreciate, but also potentially learn from, so you can apply pro strategies in your own solo queue games. Anyways, that's a wrap on this video. Thanks for watching.